All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar topic today. The only influencer marketing metrics that matter, plus three that don't. My name is Ryan Hilliard, and I am the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing and the GM of Americas here at HypeAuditor. And just want to thank everybody for joining today. We're going to be getting started in a little bit. We're going to have folks funneling into the room here. We're streaming this on YouTube and LinkedIn for the first time. So a couple of different formats. So we're going to start in about a minute. We're going to let folks pile in. But while we're waiting, I always like to start off by hearing where people are from. So I'm calling from Raleigh, North Carolina, which is about midway up the East Coast for our international attendees. I always love to hear what other parts of the country folks are from, or if they're from right around my side of town. That's also really, really cool to hear. So definitely feel free to post a comment, post it in the chat where you're joining me from. As I said, we're going to be diving into influencer marketing metrics that are critical to determining and predicting success for your campaigns, and ones that really don't matter. They might dictate price, but we'll be diving into that here shortly. We've got a few folks, so all over. Kevin's calling in from, or joining us from India, and that mustache dude is joining us from Kentucky, which is a few hours, well, more than a few hours west of me. Bram is joining us from Switzerland. Hope things are going well over there. Later in the afternoon, maybe almost evening, so maybe this is a dinner webinar for you. So a couple of housekeeping things before we get started today. We'll do an open Q&A at the end, but feel free to go ahead and post your questions directly in the comment section, post them in the chat. It's great to go ahead and see those as they come through. We'll definitely try to start from the beginning and move through, but if anything pops up, definitely ask them here. If anything isn't clear, definitely ask which slide it is, just so we can get back to it. This stream will be available on YouTube. I'm not sure how long it will live on LinkedIn, but it'll be available on YouTube. So we'll share this out afterwards so you can send it along to your team members as well, should you get a lot of value there and want to share it with others. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Ryan. Thank you for joining me today. We'll be diving into influencer marketing metrics that matter. So just hitting three key areas. So what are the chief components of making an impactful influencer marketing campaign? How can we almost predict success when we're looking at the influencers or the creators that we're partnering with, the people that we're bringing into our brand ambassador program, the requirements that we're setting? How can we make sure that we're leading with the right areas and we're not missing the mark? Then we'll dive into those critical metrics plus a few vanity metrics that don't matter, just to try to get that executive team off of, hey, I found this person with 10 million followers, right? We want to be able to have that conversation very tactfully. And then how do we apply these metrics to the right campaign? So I think maybe the most important slides are the three at the end, you can ask sort of self-reflective questions to make sure that, am I looking at the right thing? Do I know that I'm giving myself the best chance for success with this partnership, with this investment I'm going to make? More folks calling or joining us from Southeast Asia, which is really, really cool, from the Philippines and Malaysia. So I want to hear more of our US contingent. We've got folks joining us in the middle of the night. So if it's 11, definitely let us know where you're joining us from. So components of an impactful influencer marketing campaign. What are those inputs that drive the outputs that we're looking for? I think one of the hardest things with influencer marketing is there's this risk of like putting money out there, not knowing the result, not necessarily being able to make a change once you make that agreement. Whereas typical paid social or organic posts or paid search, you could just pull ads down. You can evaluate, you can make changes on the fly. So being able to look at a creator and build into a model like, hey, here's what we can expect that will be successful from this person. Here's why we can feel confident that is really, really important. It can help sort of ease the nerves, especially as we go into Q4. So I want to set into place your objective, your goal is you want to have a clear picture of how any influencer is going to contribute to your objectives. And that means you need to have a very, very clear understanding of your actual objectives. It could be that you want to grow sales, and that's great. But you need to be able to link, how does this partnership, how does this person's real authentic audience lead me to sales? Is it something that I can measure? Is it significant or is it not? Do I have the data to back it up? But you always want to be able to point how this influencer's audience is going to help you get there. And it might be that you have multiple objectives with multiple creators, and that's fine. You just want to make sure that it's very, very clear when you're having these conversations about how this person is going to get you where you need to be, and then making sure that there's an alignment there. So how do you do that? Driving results with influencer marketing starts with one thing initially, and it's strong brand and influencer alignment. A lot of times people will obsess with quality of the influencer, the size of their audience, all of those things. More missteps happen if there isn't an alignment between the brand and the influencer themselves, the content, the maturity of the brand, the familiarity of the brand and that influencer, their audience makeup. Is it our buyers or not? We've definitely seen cases where brands make huge partnership swings with somebody that's directly in their space, but it turns out their audience is not. And so it looks like a major whiff, even though on paper it seemed like it should have been great. If we looked a little bit deeper, we would have seen, hey, there's a big misalignment here. So that alignment is essential, and it's going to be that context for choosing the metrics that matter to you the most. Knowing what is a predictor of success a lot of times will come from doing those initial partnerships with influencers, determining what is sort of acceptable performance for this, having some baseline or benchmark of performance so that you can look at it, a partnership, and say, this was great, this was not great, this was horrible, this was fine, right? You need to be able to look at the partnership that you put into place and break down why it didn't work, build a hypothesis so that you can avoid it in the future, or so that you can lean into it in the future, so you can continue to scale out this profitable program. So knowing your metrics, not just latching on to, hey, we partnered with somebody with 100,000 followers once before, it seemed to work well, let's do the same thing with this person. They post the same type of content. You could have wildly different results, and that's somebody speaking from direct experience in that type of situation. And you don't want that to happen. You want to really understand the baseline of what's driving the performance that you're getting. The other thing before we actually get into the metrics is making sure that you're determining what are those 20% of metrics that are going to drive 80% of the results. How can we best predict performance? Because it's not going to be everything. There's going to be variables that are leading indicators of your success. It could be the offer that you have, right? Maybe if you offer the biggest discount you've ever done before for the longest amount of time, it might mean that you really don't have to be super preferential when it comes to choosing a partnership, because that is going to be the thing that mainly drives the results. If it's just building out your ambassador program, it might be finding those few metrics that really dictate, hey, this is how I can be confident I'm reaching the maximum amount of relevant audience within an influencer's network of followers. Maybe that's what matters. Maybe it's, this is where that audience is located. They're in the US. We can only ship in the US, right? Being able to try to find and whittle down to that 80-20 rule, what's going to be the biggest predictor of success, because it's not going to be everything. So that was our sort of quick cursory over, try to set a baseline before we get into the metrics that actually do matter. So we're going to dive through, I think that there are 7 of them, metrics that you really need to have confidence in when you're looking into a creator. Now one of the tricky things when you prepare a slideshow like this is, like, you want to give people percentages or numbers, or like, here is good, here is bad. But if you've worked in digital marketing for long enough, or influencer marketing specifically long enough, you know there's a lot of gray. There are people that will be really, really good that maybe don't pass all of these metrics, and that's okay. It's really about identifying, again, going back to that 80-20 principle, what is really going to drive that success? What's the biggest predictor? And so that's something to keep in mind as we're going through this, is not everything is going to be essential for every single person, and not your baseline of performance in terms of audience authenticity or percentage of people in your country might be different than somebody else, right? What's acceptable might be different, and the results still might be just as good. That's ultimately what you have to determine looking into the data, reflecting back on historical performance. So the number one metric, and I actually think this one's probably indisputable for brands and agencies partnering for brands, is audience authenticity. What do I mean by that? Audience authenticity is the percentage of an influencer's followers that are actual real people that have the capability to buy your product or to promote your brand. And what percentage of that audience are other influencers, people that are creating content, they're real people, and they have a great reach. Those two factors are really going to determine how much reach you get to your target audience with your promotion. You want to avoid people that have huge percentage of followers are following thousands of other people, because they're not going to see the content in their feed from you, right? The distribution that they're going to see is be spread out across all of these other people that they're following, if they're legitimate accounts anyway. And so they're not going to get all the way over to your story. They're not going to see your post. They're not going to see your TikTok, because their feed is so bogged down with other content. And so you want to make sure, am I reaching authentic and engaged people? Because then it's a percentage game. Only 12% of people are going to see this post. So if 80% of their audience is authentic and real, then I know I'm maximizing my potential here. If only 50% are real, I really need to think about how much I'm willing to invest with this influencer. Right. So there are some percentages I wanted to put here. Ideally, at least 70% of their followers are real people, or they're other influencers. Bigger is better, but there is fraudulent activity that just happens. People will get mass followers or fake followers. Can't always control that as a creator. They'll tell you that themselves. We've seen it firsthand. It's not always intentional, but you want to try to find at least 70%, if not 3/4 of that audience is real and addressable as you're thinking about that investment. Another big one here, and this far and away trumps something like follower count, is growth rate. The growth rate of an account, understanding how that reach is changing over time with that authentic audience. If I invest early, this is just like personal finance. If I invest earlier and somebody's growing over time, there's going to be a lot of long tail value that I can continue to glean from this partnership, which will be great for your brand. It's going to maximize the return on investment. It's going to be great for propping up that brand in terms of validating what you're offering, because you're working with somebody who's growing authentically, shines you in a very, very good light. Conversely, if the growth rate isn't there, or worse, it's shrinking, you should really think twice about the investment you're going to outlay. A lot of influencer and creator accounts, when they begin to plateau, they start to do more commercial partnerships because they're still trying to generate more revenue. And sometimes those commercial partnerships are falling a bit more flat. They can saturate, which means that the audience can actually shrink, or the response rates to those partnerships is going lower and lower because it's just a bunch of ads. And so your investment, which they're probably going to be asking for more money for, because again, they're trying to grow this channel, grow the income that they're getting, is going to do less for you. So you always want to be looking for people that are growing, and looking for how is that account growing relative to other accounts just like this one. A growth rate could be great. It could be poor, even if it's the same percentage, just depending on what category of influencer this is, what is the size of them. And so understanding the context behind that, you can see, like in this example, this growth rate is excellent for this type of influencer. That's what you really want to know when determining a partnership. So growth rate over follower count every day. Another metric that's really, really important, pretty easy to assess, is this person partnering with other brands? There's a few values here. If you're new to influencer marketing, this is something that you definitely want to earmark, because influencers that are partnering with other brands already, they're going to understand the logistics of doing this partnership. They're going to be a bit more organized from a project management perspective, generally speaking, than someone who's never really done a lot of partnerships. Which means fewer logistical headaches for you. So other brand mentions, especially if there's a consistency with the brand, if you see a reputable brand, there's 4 or 5 collaborations, that tells you that there is performance that's coming along with this, or that they negotiated a long-term contract. But if you're seeing repeat posts, infer performance is there. This is an investment that a brand is continuing to make, which means that this partner, this influencer is doing pretty great as a partner. They're seeing success. So that should be something that helps be a green flag for me as like, this could be a really good potential partnership. They've never done anything. It doesn't mean to avoid them. It just means that you might have more logistical headaches. They might be a little bit less familiar. Their content quality might be a little bit worse. Just something to keep in mind. You also, like I said a few slides ago, you want to look out for people who are doing too many brand partnerships. Accounts grow organically when the content is authentic and it's aligned with that audience. Too many ads is going to stifle that growth for sure. It's going to feel like this person is just here to do ads. It's no longer why I'm following them. And you also find yourself probably lost in the mix. If somebody does an ad every single day or more than one a day, it's just too much content coming from this creator promoting too many things, and the share of wallet for their audience is going to shrink for you in all likelihood. One little caveat there, if it's a person that only does reviews, yeah, most of those are going to be promotions, and that's going to be fine. The people following that account will know that. But if it's just a lifestyle blogger, just something to be aware of. Another critical metric, and this one's sneaky, is sponsored post engagement rate. Looking at how did this person's audience engage with the content before? Was there no engagement? I.e., did the creator disable comments and likes and be able to see that? That's a red flag. You definitely want to avoid any instances of that. Or on the flip side, is their sponsored content strangely getting more engagement than their organic content? I have never really seen, maybe except during the Super Bowl, where people prefer the ads to the original content, right? So it's just another thing to be mindful of and wary of. But understanding the engagement that they're seeing from different sponsor posts, understanding the dispersion of that. So if you're a golfer, you already know what that means. If you're not, it just means like the range of that performance should help you predict, okay, this is the level of engagement I'm going to see. And as your program gets more mature, you're going to be able to use that engagement rate to build a correlation around here's what we can expect from long tail performance. Whenever we have this engagement rate, we tend to get this click-through rate to our site and this many sales, right? And all you're really trying to do is predict how much success can I see from this partnership so I can determine, is this level of investment make sense? That's what the goal is here. And so you'll be able to do that by having a good sense of that sponsored post engagement rate and how that compares. Relative engagement. This is so not just the engagement rate percentage, but any sort of engagement, understanding how that performs to other similar accounts. So story time a little bit. I've shared this in the past before, but I did influencer marketing for a mobile app at my previous company. And one of the things that we sort of latched onto was like, let's look for accounts with really good engagement. We had a good partnership that went well initially. Just find similar creators with other high engagement rates. But one thing we didn't do is actually compare how that engagement rate looks to other types of accounts. It seemed like it was okay. Turns out if we looked a little bit deeper, it was actually pretty poor for the level of followers that account had compared to other similar accounts. It might be great for an account with 250,000 followers, right? This level of engagement rate, this 3%. But when somebody has 10,000 followers, their engagement rate should be much, much higher. So understanding how that engagement rate or how that engagement compares to other similar accounts will tell you, am I getting the most value for my investment? Or are there other creators that would be better suited? It's not even that this person isn't a great potential partner. It's just relative, they're kind of middle of the pack, or they're great, or they're really, really poor. And so it's just better places to put your money, or try to allocate less money here so that you can put your money where it's going to do a bit more work. So we're still clicking through here on different metrics. Again, I want to encourage folks as people continue to join. You can post any comments or questions you have in the chat. We'll get to those at the end. We have a few more metrics that are critical, and then we'll dive into some metrics that really don't matter, and then some questions to ask yourself. But thank you again. We got such a good global group, which is really awesome to see. Another metric to keep an eye on is an influencer's brand safety. Understanding how are people responding to the content they're creating? What type of content are they creating? Is anything radioactive to my brand? You want to avoid things where the audience can infer any sort of affiliation directly to you, which would be negatively impacting your business. So doing those brand safety checks, looking for red flags that for you as a brand, we don't want any part of this. Looking at the sentiment of the content that people are posting out. Is it positive? Is it mostly neutral? Is it negative? If it's trending negatively, if those things are happening, you might want to put a pause in the partnership. You might want to scrap it all together. But looking at that, having a good understanding of that brand safety, especially if you're a bigger brand, is really, really important to just avoid problems in the future. As we're getting closer to election season in the US, certainly we're probably going to see political content ramp up. And a lot of brands are going to want to stay very much in the middle, away from everything. And so those checks will be really, really important, because any sort of party affiliation or commentary around a situation could result in a little bit of a revolt from one side or the other against your brand. And you don't want that. So just keeping an eye on that is really, really important. Audience demographics. These are really, really important, because one thing that brands need to remember when it comes to influencer partnerships or display advertising or social, any of that, is my goal is really to reach my target buyer, my target persona, the person who this message is going to resonate with the most. It's not really that important about the influencer's demographics, their content even, right? That's going to dictate how they've gotten their audience, how authentic it is, who those people are. But really, you want to make sure, do I have a good, firm understanding of who I'm going to reach from their active, authentic audience? Some metrics are going to matter more than others, right? If you're selling luxury goods, it might be that you really want to focus on females 35 plus with discretionary income, because we sell luxury goods, and we want to find that most significant penetration. Are you going to find audiences on social media with influencers that only have high net worth individuals following them? No, because it doesn't really work like that. But understanding that percentage will be a better predictor of success that you might see, right? If only 5% of this person's active audience is relevant to me, then I really need to be thinking twice about the level of investment I'm going to make. Because that 5%, what percent is going to then click through to my site? What percent is going to add to the cart, right? All of that funnel drop off is still going to happen. And so in order to predict the success from these campaigns, you need to isolate, well, who am I actually going to reach? What is that volume number? And then how is it going to break down? That way you can predict success, right? If you begin to divide up traffic 100 times over, you might think, I'm reaching 1 million people here on social media. How come I got 4 sales? Well, if you break it down based off of how many of their followers are real people, how many are in your target demographics, how many are in the target market for buying a product, that might actually be a pretty good result. Doesn't mean it's a good return, right? You probably shouldn't have done that, but you might be getting the most that you can if you don't break things down further into who am I actually trying to reach. So lots of metrics are available. Really determining who is the person I'm trying to reach is really, really critical. Note, it will change from time to time. As we get closer to holiday gift giving season, if you sell a product that skews towards women most of the year, don't be afraid of an audience of men during the holidays, because it could be high conversion rate gift giving, right? I'm reaching somebody that can give a gift. they're going to show up to our site. They're just going to buy. It's going to resonate with them for their significant other. And that's okay. Maybe throughout the rest of the year, we don't want that, but maybe during the holidays, it could work really, really well. All right, so that's metrics that matter. Now we're going to get into metrics that don't matter. And there might be folks that don't agree. I'd love to hear commentary on some of the metrics that we dove through that do matter. If we didn't touch on something that you feel like is just essential to evaluating an influencer, to predicting success, definitely post it in the comments so that folks can benefit. And then as we go through these metrics that don't matter, if you've got your rebuttals as to why you think I'm wrong, or if you've got other metrics that you say this metric doesn't matter either, definitely chime in. Love to see that interaction amongst folks, especially across all of the boards that we have here. It's always really fun. So follower count is the number one. This is like the most obvious one, right? Follower count is the thing that gets all of the attention, and every single online blog will say follower count doesn't matter. But the thing that you do have to navigate is that follower count is going to be what attracts the attention of, the CEO or the founder or the CMO of like, hey, I want to get this person with all of these followers. If we get all these followers, we're going to make so much money selling this product, or we're going to get so many new customers into our business. This is like chasing the Super Bowl, right? I want 1 billion eyeballs. Do we really want 1 billion eyeballs? Are these eyeballs even relevant to us? Being able to break that down into, well, who is relevant to me in this huge follower count? What is this person asking for price? We can get more reach to our relevant audience with smaller influencers. And so breaking down how follower count doesn't really matter to you is really, really important. Now, follower count will ultimately drive price. Even accounts that are shrinking over time, we're going to say, I've got 3 million followers. They love me. So I want X amount of money. I want, $30,000 for this partnership. And I don't really care. But if you can break it down, that might be a negotiating tactic for you. Like, hey, I'd still want to do this partnership, but your addressable audience for us is only this subset. So this is what we can allocate for this. Otherwise, just move on. It's really, really appealing to have that. Like, hey, look, we have a partnership with this person with 10 million followers. They really loved us. If that person is not already familiar with your brand, if they're not already relevant to your audience, that's just vanity, right? Oh yeah, it was great. What did that translate to at the end of the day in terms of people coming to your site, new followers for your brand on social media, people registering for your newsletter, people that actually buy product? How does that play out long-term? It's not going to be there if you're just chasing that big, big number, right? People will make this mistake again in January for the Super Bowl because they think if I can just get in front of 10 million people locally or regionally, or however they're going to break it down, or if they're going to spot the huge amount for the national TV spot and spend whatever amount of money it's going to cost this year, it's not going to translate. There's plenty of articles that you could find around brands that did Super Bowl ads that don't exist anymore, right? Because that's not going to be a direct indicator of success just because there were eyeballs there. Engagement rate. Now, this is the one where I suspect I might get some down thumbs or tomatoes, but I'd make a really good case that engagement rate doesn't matter in most cases without context, right? So engagement rate on the surface is just a static number. It doesn't mean anything unless you break it down based off of the size of the influencer, other influencers in this space, the authenticity of that engagement. Does it look inflated or not? Those are going to be very, very telling as to whether engagement rate is something that you can value or you have to really discount. So it's missing a critical context. If you say, oh, there's lots and lots of engagement on this one TikTok from this creator, there's not the same type of engagement anywhere else. It might just be a one-hit wonder. There might not be a whole lot of value for you there. Yes, that's one video had so much reach. What are the chances of your partnership doing the same thing? Pretty slim, right? So you have to balance it with context of what's happened lately. How real does this engagement look? How does it compare to others before you use that metric in your model? It's just like conversion rates. used to work at an agency. We had lots of e-commerce clients, and they would say, what's a good engagement rate or what's a good conversion rate that we should be aiming for? Impossible to predict, right? Nike's conversion rate on their site is probably below 1% because they have so much traffic. Does it mean it's not successful? No, it's very, very successful. But a small niche e-commerce brand should maybe be aiming for 3% or 5%. It's really going to vary based off of your individual scenario. And so you don't want to latch onto specific percentages. Any agency or individual that's like, this is the minimum engagement rate that we want, is missing a whole lot of context. It might make sense for what they're talking about in the moment, but you definitely want to make sure, do I understand that you're saying, even if they have this many followers, this engagement rate is good? And if they say, yes, this is a universal number, definitely a red flag. You would want to push a little bit deeper. And the last metric that doesn't matter is influencer demographics. And this is one, influencer content, influencer demographics. What do they look like? Are they really one of my customers? They're not buying your product, right? You're probably even sending them product. So the value of who that influencer is, their age, their marital status, things like that, aren't going to be necessarily predictors of any success that you're going to have unless you can rely on the same stats for their audience. Now, if you find, hey, I partnered with this guy, he grills out back, he's got a big beard, and I was able to see that 80% of his audience is also a big guy with a beard that grills in their backyard. Sure, could be perfect. Unfortunately, people can follow whoever they want, and people's interests sort of run the gamut. And so you definitely want to be looking for people that have an audience of who is relevant to you as a brand or you as an agency, not so much the influencer. This is where you find pockets of brands emerge using influencer marketing because they focus so much more on the audience and where my audience participating and engaging, and less on the influencer themselves. And so they'll see, hey, I'm drawing lots of people to my fitness app, even though I'm talking to a parent blogger, but because they're followed by other parents who are thinking about their fitness, this works for me. And also those partnerships break through the noise because it's the relevant audience, but it's not the same thing over and over again for that audience. It's something new, but it still matters to them. So discount influencer demographics, focus on that audience. If you've got to sell internally, I just don't think this person's good for our brand. Well, here are the people that they're reaching. The people that they're reaching matter. Would we want our direct competitor to partner with them and be exposed to all of these potential customers, or would we rather be there? And if the answer to that question is, well, we'd rather be there, then it's a great partnership. Definitely should try it out. So de-emphasize influencer demographics themselves, focus on the audience. So last question, we're running into the home stretch here. How do we know which metrics we should prioritize for our campaign? I'm seeing some questions that will hit from the Q&A. Keep them coming in as you're joining. Number one, when it comes to finding alignment, and you're thinking about like what metrics should I be looking at, is you need to put into context the maturity of your brand. A lot of people are starting new brands because they want influencer marketing to be a cost-efficient way to grow brand awareness, to grow trust. But you need to put that context together that if you are a startup that no one has ever heard of, partnering with a huge influencer, there's a misalignment, right? Unless that influencer is a founder or somebody that's really closely involved. They love your brand, you're friends with them, whatever it might be. But if it's just a stranger cold connection, you definitely want to look for people that are much more close in maturity for their audience as your brand is. Small brand, smaller influencers as you're getting started, because it's going to resonate more with connecting with them. They're going to be much more responsive. The partnership's going to seem a bit more seamless, more aligned overall to that audience. And you'll see more direct results, as well as manage that cost. If your brand is really, really mature, you've got a program that's going really, really well, you know the ins and outs of what drives success in influencer marketing, sure, you can swing for the fences. At this point, it's just numbers. You have an understanding of that audience. But if you're a startup, avoid, I just need to do the Super Bowl of all partnerships, and then it will be great. You probably have other things to worry about, like website conversion rate, brand confidence, shipping. All of those are going to be factors that will determine the actual purchase, not just the eyeballs. The next one is, what does success look like, right? So making sure that you know what you're trying to do with this partnership. There's a really, really good reel that goes around on Instagram all the time for marketers, where it's like, what are we trying to do with this partnership? Brand awareness. What are we really trying to do? Brand awareness, really sales, right? So if you want to drive sales with influencer marketing, that is fine. But the metrics that you're going to be looking at, the priorities that you're going to have in an audience, and the investment you're going to make is going to be different than if you're trying to focus on reach. You're going to be focusing on reach and brand awareness. A partnership with somebody, 10 different people, one partnership might be fine. If you want to focus on sales, it might be 10 partnerships with one person, because that frequency of hearing the message is going to be really, really important for dictating sales. Spreading it all thin is not going to help you, because there's going to be some decision-making process on the follower's part. So you need to be thinking about that when you're doing your partnerships. You can't just map out, I want to have 10 partnerships with people that cost $500 to $2,000 each. We'll just see what happens, right? I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to go well if you don't put into context, what are you actually trying to hope for here? How will you know if success is, what success looks like? Another important question to answer is short-term campaign results versus building long-term value. Is this just, I'm going to partner with them, see what I get, and then we'll figure it out later? Or no, I want this person to represent my brand. That's going to change how you're thinking about the metrics that you're looking at, the alignment with your brand, whether it's just more transactional or strategic. And the last one is like, what kind of partnerships do you want? If you want to focus on long-term strategic partnerships and you're a startup, you're going to be looking at a very, very different part of the influencer market than if you are a big flashy brand that wants to focus on reach for a new product launch. Very, very different. So you really want to make sure that you understand and vocalize to the team, to leadership, whoever it is, like, this is what we're trying to do. We agree that if this happens, this will be a success. And if this happens, this will be a failure. But these are the metrics that we're focused on. That will help you determine what kind of partnership you should focus on at the end of the day. You want to avoid situations where those things aren't clearly laid out, because then you'll get a misalignment of expectations, i.e. everyone will think that there should be a lot of sales, and you'll be sitting there saying, I thought we were focused on brand awareness. And I would have done partnerships completely differently if that's what we were trying to do. Right. So as we go through everything, I want to just underline, like, the most critical metrics you're considering when you're considering an influencer are going to be different depending on where you are. If you are a business owner and you just hired somebody from a different company that ran an influencer marketing campaign, they should not be running back and pulling the exact same influencers for the exact same reasons, unless the product has such an overlap in buyers, right? It's going to be different for everybody and for your brand and your maturity and everything like that. So you want to make sure that you're sort of allowing things to fluctuate and to breathe and change as you're getting new data in. It's sort of a living, breathing thing, these influencer marketing campaigns. So that's it. We're about to open up the Q&A. Thank you for everyone for joining. Just a quick summary. We dove into components of an impactful campaign, metrics that are important, vanity metrics that don't really matter at all, and how do you apply those metrics to your campaign. Once again, we're going to share out the link to this so you can watch it on YouTube. You can share it with others if you want to take screenshots of the slides or review anything again in more detail. You'll definitely be able to. My name's Ryan Hilliard. If you have any questions that you don't want to pass into the chat, there's a few emails here that you can reach out to: sales@hypeauditor.com. My last name, Hilliard@hypeauditor.com. Happy to follow up in more depth. But let's jump to the Q&A. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's start at the top. From Kevin on YouTube, what's the time period to measure engagement rate? Measuring engagement rate, and a lot of this is going to be, what have you done for me lately? Somebody that has a huge engagement rate historically, but nothing lately, you have to think that their audience isn't as engaged anymore. And so when they partner with my brand, it's not going to mean as much. If that engagement rate is surging lately, right, it might mean I'm okay with spending more money on this because this is growing in popularity of this account. This person's really found sort of the golden ticket for their content creation. So in general, maybe you look at the last dozen posts, reels and TikToks, like get a good sample size. But if they're not posting content frequently, they're not posting at least once a week, if they're posting once a month, or if they haven't posted in more than a month, I'd rethink that partnership altogether, because all of the engagement doesn't matter. They haven't been feeding the algorithms that they are producing good quality content. And so you just doing a partnership out of the blue is not necessarily going to do anything at all. So look for recency, look at 10 to a dozen of the most recent content that you care about, and avoid people that aren't posting regularly. From Kush, how can we accurately determine audience demographics? This is a great question, right? The obvious answer is, hey, you reach out to the influencer, you ask them to take a screenshot of their Instagram insights, whatever it may be, pass it along, and then you decide. Obviously, there's going to be a bottleneck there. Most people aren't going to do that. They're not going to respond. You can use tools like HypeAuditor. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at the active audience, break down what those followers look like using a sample, and then present it back. We have a really, really close alignment with what you would see in Instagram Insights. Note that we're just looking at the active audience, not all followers. And I actually think that's a really, really important distinction. Somebody that's followed an account 5 years ago but doesn't use Instagram anymore, they're not valuable to you, right? Who is actively engaging with this content recently? That's who I want to know, because that's who I'm going to probably reach. And so you could just use a tool like HypeAuditor or other tools out there on the market. We got a couple of more questions. Should engagement rate be measured on a base of followers or a base of views? It's going to vary depending on like the format, the network that you're using. In general, it's going to be based off of follower count. But I do think that there's something to be thinking about there. If this is getting a lot of views and no engagement, what does that mean? But in general, it's just going to be based off of follower count. Alec, I agree that there's no such thing as bad engagement? I would not really agree on that. Yes, bad comments can add up to more overall engagement, but like inauthentic comments don't do anything for you. You have to think about these interactions. People scroll through the interactions that they see. They don't go, oh, this got a lot of comments, I guess I'm going to buy the product. People like to see what the comments are. And if it's fake looking or irrelevant to the post or negative, I would say this is going to hurt brand reputation. You're going to see fewer sales because of it. So not all engagement's good engagement. Bad engagement, you want to avoid it. That's where you want to focus on brand safety, sentiment analysis. Avoid people that are radioactive. Radioactivity can be good in some cases. Most of the time it's really, really bad for your brand, at least. Let's see here. From Tiffany on YouTube, regarding success, are there any other KPIs we should consider? Education, awareness? No, I mean, I think you might have varying objectives with your one influencer marketing channel, right? I would lean into what makes the most sense for your brand, right? If you're focused on selling $1,000 mattresses or something else that's like a once every 5 or 10 or 20 year purchase, there's going to need to be a lot of education. People are not going to just say, oh, look, this person's having a mattress, I'm going to buy a mattress now, right? So you really will want to lean in and focus there. If you're selling something that's a bit more transactional, phone case type of thing, right? You might be able to be a bit more flexible, focus less on education, much more on like, hey, this exists, it looks cool, it's not very expensive, low consideration, I'll just buy it. So it can really vary. There's lots of different things, but just think about the decision-making process somebody goes through to buy the product in general. If it's luxury goods, if it's home goods, if it's a one-time purchase, if it's a repeat purchase, those are the things that will shape the content that you create. If you're not keeping that in consideration when you're doing these partnerships, when you're creating content, that's when you run into those issues where like, I don't see anything from influencer marketing. Well, it's because you disregarded the entire buyer journey and thought that they would just purchase. or you're doing something around mission and brand when people are just going to pay $5 for the product, right? You have to match those things up, get that alignment to see results. All right. Let's see here from Kevin again. What is the general metric that is used to measure campaign success by a brand? That's going to be dictated on what is the goal. Most brands are going to say, I do want to see some sales at the end of the day, but sales might be a long time coming, depending on the price of the product, the consideration that will be taken in. People do like to look at earned media value. If I was going to put this money somewhere else, right? If I was going to put it into Google ads, yes, I might get some direct response sales. What volume would I get? I'm going to get no brand awareness from doing paid search ads. But maybe I don't care about that. If I do care about brand awareness, if I do want to partner with somebody that's going to talk about my product, show it in a more in-depth light, then that's another consideration or priority to be thinking about. How many people am I reaching? What does that authentic engagement look like? Who's the audience that I'm resonating with? Are there good comments? Are there things that I can glean from this where it really did seem to resonate and I can build on this? You should see people click through to your site. You should see more followers, things like that. Don't get stuck on like those exact numbers, but you should see it. Right? It's all going to be in terms of how you define success of the campaign. We'll do 2 more questions. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, modern performer on YouTube. Most major brands don't want to see old insights. They want to story views, link clicks, things like that. Sure. I mean, the direct response you get from stories and having links is great. Problem with stories is that they have like a 2% view rate from people's audiences. So that's when you really have to think about how big is this active audience, because 2% of that number is it's going to be pretty small depending on the scope of this partnership. So we just want to make sure that we get that right. And then the last question we'll hit on today, feel free to send along more if you have them, is an example of a repeat partnership. I think it's pretty straightforward. When you find somebody, it's like, this is a perfect fit influencer. The worst thing you could do is say, I'm going to partner with them once and then that's it, right? If somebody's really aligned with you, they're really easy to work with, you think that they're just a great representative of your brand, you should partner with them all the time. Think about TV ads where there's the same guy showing up for these commercials. It's because it resonates. It's because there is this really strong alignment. And so you just build in something ongoing. It could be a retainer for a certain number of posts every month. It could be we just work through a contract every quarter, but doing them over and over again will make sure that the audience is seeing this content more than once. This is an authentic partnership. I've seen the product more than once. It's helping with that consideration cycle. Maybe I'll share it because I think it's cool. I've seen it more than once, right? There's a lot of value in doing those repeat partnerships. And it's really just as simple as working with that creator over and over again, not just recycling the same content necessarily, but other formats, other networks, other ways to just, show that, hey, there's a really good alignment here. Cool. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us both on YouTube and LinkedIn today. Once again, we'll send along a link to the stream after this. You can obviously just go to the YouTube link that you're on now. I'm not sure how long the LinkedIn one stays up. Once again, my name is Ryan. I'm joining from the East Coast. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, and evening. And we'll see you all in about a month. We'll be doing another one of these webinars. Have a great day.